So, she's emerged.
She's back. 3 months of silence.
Are you surprised?
No, not really. I thought she would come out. You know, she's always believed in these things. She was a policy wonk before being Prime Minister. She very passionately believes in free markets, much more so than Boris. And I think that she thought this was the right time before the mini-budget. And she's saying, look, no one else is saying these things about growth. I wanted to get back and join the political debate.
Now, the one part of her testimony that people struggle with is about these financial instruments, LDIs, that caused such a run on the UK bond market. And from what I can make out, these are UK pension funds who've been so constrained with low interest rates that they're basically punting with our retirement money. Said nobody had briefed her. Is that a reasonable defence?
I think it's going to be something that's going to have to be teased out, frankly, and it's going to be probably the line from these two interventions, which is going to be the one that dominates the next couple of months. What did the Bank of England know? What did the Treasury know? I think in defence of those institutions, I think Liz Truss and her team tried to pick too many fights at once, and they always made it very clear from the start that they wanted to do things in a certain way, and the problem was they took on too many people at once. Someone said to me, you know, she did 7 weeks of Thatcherism, 7 years of Thatcherism in 7 weeks, and that was the kind of problem. But I do think it's a question to be asked. I think a lot of allies of Liz Truss have been quietly asking and saying, have we simply allowed the Bank of England and the regulators to get away with this?
And the IMF. And the IMF.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they're all these institutions, and they get to hide behind the Truss government and say it's all on her. Well, actually, it's not. And what really worrying thing for this country is that the problems go much deeper than any political mistakes she made herself.
Now, she is challenging.
Yeah.
And it's not so much the Sunak, but the Hunt philosophy. We have got, on the 1st of April this year, corporation tax going up by 30%. We've got dividend tax, again, on small business shareholders going up by 1.25%. We've got no thought of relaxing IR35 rules. In a way, what she's saying is a big challenge to Sunak, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. And I think that was the key fault line of the last year's leadership contest, which was about tax and corporation tax.
And she won.
She did. She won. And she won with the membership. Quite convincingly, 15 points. And I think that shows really that there's a lot of people in the country, particularly in the party, perhaps we should say, who think that message resonates with them. And I think that's probably the real danger, because you're talking about people, former prime ministers. You know, Boris has a sort of personal loyalty to him, but Truss has a policy agenda. And in some ways, that might be more interesting and longer-term challenge, the kind of hegemony that Sunak and the orthodoxy that Hunt is espousing as well.
Now, she comes out again today. She's done an interview with The Spectator. The Telegraph front page again was on China.
Yeah.
You know, fresh from the spy balloon scandal in America. But she says that, you know, Sunak is too soft on China. I don't know how many more of these volleys she's going to come out with. But the looks of it, there's a few more days of this left. That's at least how it feels to me. Is this, in your view, making a positive contribution to the debate about what conservatism ought to be? Or is she splitting the party yet further?
Depends who you ask. I was having this conversation with someone from Number 10, and they pointed out they were noting the fact that, for instance, on the 98 days when Rishi Sunak was in office, that they'd outlasted Truss by 2, so 2 lettuces. But I think actually more broadly, a lot of MPs will be saying, look, we've had an overcorrection. We have moved too far in the way of orthodoxy. We have gone from being sort of an anti-tax party to being a pro-tax party, and not really questioned the orthodoxy of the past decade. So I think there will be some Conservatives quietly who are saying, you know, is there a balance perhaps between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss? And I would also make the point that I think that the reason why we're having all this discussion about Liz Truss is because there's a gap which Rishi Sunak is not filling.
But James, this is not about balance. This is about philosophy. You know, is the Conservative Party a high tax, high spend, big state party, or should it move in the opposite direction? There's no compromise there.
Yeah. That is the party debate which has been playing out since 2019, where, frankly, you had these red wall constituencies where the MPs want to have more public spending in those seats and those traditional low taxes in those southern areas as well. I don't think they've got the answer to that right now. I think you see all that tension still being played out, going on throughout the party. I think probably they'll come back to a low tax party, but it'll probably be when they're a much smaller party in opposition after the next election.
And Boris Johnson now, for low taxes, having spent all his time as Prime Minister putting them up. Is that credible?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I pointed to this endlessly when he said we're a low tax party, and we were hiking corporation tax. And I think it's probably, perhaps it's because he knows what the Tory party like to hear. And I think that's very much in the mood at the moment. And that's one of his interventions.
So can Boris come back as leader?
I'm sceptical, particularly this side of election. And he may well lose his seat as well with a majority of 7,000.
And can Liz Truss become a big player again in British politics?
I think there will be some in the party who see her as a kind of John the Baptist figure, Keith Joseph to a Thatcher. Maybe she was saying the right things in a few years' time. There'll be an MP and a leader who agree with her and try and take that forward.
I have to say, folks, I actually, even though I thought it was a bit of a joke, her becoming Prime Minister, philosophically, I actually think she's saying many of the right things. And unless the Conservative Party becomes that, what is the point of it? If they all become Social Democrats, there was nothing to choose between, frankly, Rishi and Starmer. While you're here, it's taken them 6.5 years. 6.5 years to start to even consider getting rid of EU rules. I mean, it drives me bonkers. But currently we have a piece of legislation going forward to get rid of 4,000 pieces of EU law. We're told tonight there is an unholy alliance in the House of Lords of Liberal Democrats, Labour and Thatcherites who are saying, actually, government shouldn't decide what laws we keep, what laws we get rid of. Parliament should debate this and decide this. What are the prospects of this piece of legislation getting through?
I'm sceptical for the reasons you've laid out, by the fact that there are some Conservatives as well who have doubts about this piece of legislation. Of course, the big fear in the back of everyone's mind is there's going to be an election next year, we think October, November 2024, and the concerns are you're going to get a Labour government with the support of people who want to be back in the EU, and you're not going to have any of these rules ripped up. And you think, what was the point of Brexit 6-7 years on?
So then basically you can rejoin the single market, no problem at all.
There'll be far less divergence to overcome and to get those barriers back into the single market, as you say. That's the real concern. That's what was driving forward this piece of legislation in the Commons. But there's going to be a big fight in the Lords over it.
Dear, oh dear, James Heale, thank you very much indeed.